Welcome to Reverble, where we bring you the most captivating and thought-provoking stories from across the web. If you love hearing incredible tales that resonate, inspire, or simply make you say wow, you're in the right place. We're on a mission to reach 100,000 subscribers and need your help to make it happen. If you love our channel, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications and join our amazing community. Your support means the world to us, and we're excited to continue sharing these incredible stories with you. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Carl had been in prison for nearly 25 years with only a few months left until his release. His sentence was long and heavy, 28 years for a crime that no one in the family liked to talk about. It was a dark time that shattered everything they once knew. But through it all, Carl clung to hope, working tirelessly from behind bars. Just 3 years into his sentence, he began sending money home, small payments, bit by bit, to their mother, Laura, with strict instructions. "Save this for when I get out. I'll need a fresh start." Laura took the responsibility seriously. She continued accepting those payments, even after losing her husband. She was the glue that held the family together, ensuring her children stayed connected despite their separate lives. Laura had always hoped to see her eldest son walk out of prison a free man. But life had other plans. She passed away just before Thanksgiving the previous year. The family mourned her loss, and soon after, Carl's payments went to their eldest sister, Eleanor, who promised to safeguard the money just as their mother had. Eleanor had always lived a simple life, struggling financially for as long as anyone could remember. She relied on subsidized housing and worked the late shift at a convenience store to make ends meet. Though her situation was never easy, she got by. The family assumed she was faithfully saving Carl's money, until that fateful day in May when everything unraveled. It was a bright Saturday when Eleanor invited the family over for a special announcement. She described it as a barbecue they wouldn't forget. "You won't believe your eyes," she texted, the excitement palpable even through the screen. No one thought much of it. Perhaps she had gotten a promotion or come into some money. But when Ava, their youngest sister, and Dahlia, the middle child and the family's storyteller, arrived at the unfamiliar address Eleanor had sent, their hearts sank. "Are we at the right place?" Ava asked, wide-eyed, as she stared at the beautifully decorated two-story house. Balloons floated from the mailbox, and a huge banner draped across the front porch read, "Welcome home, Eleanor." The house looked immaculate, the lawn freshly mowed, the driveway gleaming under the afternoon sun. Dahlia exchanged a worried glance with Ava. "This doesn't feel right." "No way she could afford this," Ava whispered, suspicion creeping into her voice. "Unless—" Eleanor greeted them with an air of pride, looking more radiant than they'd ever seen her. Dressed in a tailored linen jumpsuit, gold jewelry sparkling, she led them inside. The family gathered in the backyard, where Eleanor made her announcement. "Surprise! I bought a house!" she exclaimed. Cheers erupted and the family clapped, but tension lingered in the air. Dahlia's smile was strained, Ava's eyes narrowed, and their other siblings exchanged uneasy glances. "Wow, Eleanor, that's amazing!" Dahlia said, her voice tight. "How'd you pull this off?" "Oh, just a little saving here and there," Eleanor replied vaguely, waving her hand. But as the barbecue continued, the celebration felt hollow. Dahlia pulled Ava aside. "Something's not adding up," she muttered. "How could she afford all this?" Ava nodded. "I'll start looking into it." A week later, Ava came back with answers that shook Dahlia to her core. Eleanor had used every cent of Carl's savings, the money meant for his fresh start after prison, to buy her new home. All those years of saving had been siphoned into her down payment. "Ava, are you sure?" Dahlia whispered, horrified. "I have proof. Bank statements, transaction records. It's all there. She took his money, Dahlia." The revelation hit Dahlia like a punch to the gut. She was furious, but more than that, she was terrified. Carl had a violent past, one that had put him in prison for murder. What would he do when he found out? What could any of them do? "We have to tell him," Ava said firmly during a tense family meeting at Dahlia's apartment. Dahlia shook her head. "If he finds out while still inside, there's no telling how he'll react." Eleanor initially denied everything. "I had every right to use that money," she snapped when confronted. "I was taking care of things for him. It's not like he's going to need that much right away." "You stole from him," Ava fired back. "That wasn't yours to take." I did nothing wrong, Eleanor shouted, her voice cracking with a mix of defiance and desperation. Do you really think Carl's going to care? You're making a big deal out of nothing. He'll never know if you keep your mouths shut. Dahlia's heart pounded. Eleanor, you don't understand. If he finds out, it could destroy everything. Weeks passed with no resolution. The family was divided, some siding with Dahlia and Ava, others with Eleanor. The weight of Carl's looming release felt like a ticking time bomb, and no one had the courage to confront him. Yet the truth hung over them like a dark cloud, threatening to unravel everything. What happens if he finds out on his own? Ava asked one night, her voice edged with fear. What if he asks where the money is? We need to talk to a lawyer, Dahlia suggested, pacing anxiously. But even if we do, how can we prove the money was meant for him? There's nothing written down. I can't believe she did this, Ava muttered, burying her face in her hands. We're at a crossroads, Dahlia. We have to do something. Dahlia let out a heavy sigh. We need to tell him ourselves before it's too late. Carl called every week, and with each passing day, his release date drew closer. Desperate, Dahlia and Ava sought legal advice, hoping for a solution. But every lawyer they consulted gave them the same grim response. Without written instructions from Carl specifying the money's intended use, they had no legal case. Without a formal agreement, one lawyer had told them, it's going to be incredibly difficult. Legally, there's little to no recourse. They were at a standstill. Legally, they were trapped. But morally, Dahlia knew they couldn't keep the secret forever. The truth had to come out, one way or another. The morning of Carl's next phone call arrived, and the family gathered anxiously in Dahlia's living room. The tension was palpable as the phone rang. Dahlia took a deep breath and picked it up. Hey, sis, Carl's voice crackled through the line, warm but cautious. Hey, Carl, Dahlia replied, her voice trembling. Listen, we need to talk. There was a pause on the other end. What's going on? Carl asked, his tone shifting. He could sense something was wrong. Eleanor stood frozen in the corner, her face pale, her hands gripping the back of a chair as if it could hold her up. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on all of them. Ava shifted nervously on the couch, her eyes darting between Eleanor and Dahlia, waiting for the inevitable fallout. Dahlia's heart pounded as she brought the phone to her ear. She could hear Carl's steady breathing on the other end, oblivious to the storm brewing on this side of the line. She swallowed hard and closed her eyes for a moment, bracing herself. Carl? Her voice cracked. It's about the money. There was a long pause, and she could almost hear the gears turning in Carl's mind. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but she could feel his confusion and concern in the silence. The money? What do you mean? He finally asked, his voice calm but laced with suspicion. Dahlia's eyes flicked to Eleanor, who looked like she was about to bolt. But there was no running from this. The money you sent home over the years, Mom was saving it for you, and when she passed, Eleanor took over. Another pause. I know that, Carl said slowly. So what's going on? Ava couldn't stay silent any longer. She blurted out, Eleanor spent it, Carl. She used all of it to buy a house. The silence on the other end was deafening. Dahlia held her breath, waiting for Carl's response. She could almost see him clenching his jaw, disbelief turning to rage. What did you just say? Carl's voice was dangerously low now, and Dahlia could feel the temperature in the room drop. Eleanor's knuckles turned white as she gripped the chair harder, her breathing shallow. She took all the money you sent for your fresh start, Dahlia said, her voice barely above a whisper. She used it for herself, to buy a house. There was a sharp intake of breath on Carl's end. Then, silence again. But this silence felt different, like the calm before a storm. When? Carl's voice was controlled, but the anger was unmistakable. When did this happen? Dahlia exchanged a quick glance with Ava, who nodded. A few months ago. She bought the house in May. And none of you thought to tell me? None of you? Dahlia felt guilt wash over her, knotting in her stomach. We didn't know how, Carl. We didn't want to make things worse for you. You're so close to getting out, and we didn't want... You didn't want what? Carl cut her off, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. You didn't want to make me angry? Well, congratulations, you failed. Eleanor's voice suddenly broke through, high-pitched and panicked. Carl, wait, I can explain. Explain? Carl's voice boomed through the phone, filled with venom. Explain how you stole from me, how you used the money that was supposed to help me rebuild my life for your own selfish needs. Eleanor flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't think it would matter. You don't need that much money when you get out, Carl. I'm your sister. I needed to secure a future. I don't need that much money? Carl's laugh was bitter, cold. Eleanor, I've been in prison for 25 years. Everything I had is gone. That money was the only thing I had left. And you. He stopped himself, his voice faltering as if he couldn't find the words. Dahlia could hear him breathing heavily, his frustration boiling over. You don't know what it's like in here, Eleanor. You don't know what I've been through. And you took everything I had. How could you do that? How could you betray me like this? Eleanor was sobbing now, her voice shaky. I didn't mean to betray you, Carl. I thought I was doing what was best for the family. I was struggling so much. You don't get to justify this, Carl spat. You don't get to make this about you. You've stolen from me, Eleanor. Do you know what that means? Dahlia winced, knowing exactly what Carl was implying. Eleanor had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. What? What are you going to do? Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Carl replied, his voice now eerily calm. But trust me, when I get out, you and I are going to have a conversation. A real one. And you'd better be ready for it. The line went dead. Dahlia sat there, phone still in her hand, feeling the weight of what had just transpired. Ava looked over at Eleanor, who had sunk into the chair, her body shaking with sobs. That didn't go well, Ava murmured, her face pale. No, Dahlia whispered, staring blankly ahead. No, it didn't. And in that moment, the family knew there was no turning back. Whatever happened next would change them all forever.